Hello everyone, welcome to week 17 of my NFL predictions. It's crazy to think that there's only 2 games left of the regular season before the playoffs. Feels like just a couple weeks ago where we were in the first and second week, and now we're on week 17. That is wild to think how quickly this year has gone and this NFL season. Last week, I went 9-7 because, typical. Of course I went. Of course I did. Of course I went 9-7. Um, I got Steelers wrong. I got Patriots wrong. Raiders wrong. Jets wrong. Falcons very much wrong. I got the Seahawks wrong, which I'm actually happy about. Ravens wrong. And actually no, that's 7, isn't it? Ravens, Seahawks, Falcons, Jets, Steelers, Patriots, Raiders. Yeah, those are 7 I got wrong. Got all the NFC matchups correct. Rams, Packers, Lions, Bears, Eagles. Albeit, Panthers nearly won. It's getting a bit close. And so did the Vikings. And the Commanders nearly won, though. And I nearly got that right. Titans nearly won, and I nearly got that right. But I'm glad that Seahawks won. Cowboys nearly won, and I nearly got that wrong. Broncos nearly won. Chargers nearly won. Yeah, so some real close games this week. But this week, I think, is where you're going to see the competitiveness of some teams really start to emerge. And we'll see in the first game on Thursday night, Jets-Browns. The Jets managed to put up 30 points against the Commanders. Somehow their offense actually did stuff. And they nearly blew it. They nearly blew their lead. I think they had like a 30-7 lead. No, hang on, no, that's wrong. 27-7 lead. And then Commanders ended up making a comeback, taking the lead for a short while, 28-27. But ultimately it ended in a Jets win of 30-28. The Browns destroying the Stroudless Texans in Houston, and they are looking like they can compete with anyone in the AFC. Ravens are the best team in the league at the moment, and the Browns can compete with them, mainly because they're divisional rivals and they struggle against each other. But I think at the moment they would struggle most with the Dolphins. But being the number 5 seed, if they win here, being number 5, they would get the number 5 seed, or at least they would get in the playoffs if they won this game here. And I think that's what's going to happen. They're at the number 5 seed, so they're really looking for the playoffs. And I reckon even if they lost the next 2 games, they would still make it in. A 10-5 record is very solid. Going to 10-7 for a number 5 seed is pretty good as well. I reckon they'll get the win against the Jets. They've been playing solid. They've got a decent defense, and I think they'll be able to stop the Jets and secure their playoff spot. The next game is the Lions at the Cowboys. This game is next because it's Saturday night. And the Lions barely scraping a victory against the Vikings with a game-winning interception. But to be fair, Nick Mullins had 4 interceptions in total on that day. So did Brock Purdy actually against the Ravens. But the thing is, the Niners they were punished by the Ravens for having those 4 interceptions. The Vikings weren't really punished all that much. The Lions only won by 6, so the touchdown was the interception was on the goal line. So if they hadn't made that interception, it could have very well been a touchdown and the Vikings could have won. The Lions weren't punishing them enough. And the Cowboys losing another away game at Miami, losing to a field goal as time expired, which is the Dolphins' first win against a team with a winning record since last year. So that curse has been broken. But the Cowboys are playing in Dallas. They haven't lost in Dallas this year, and I don't think they'll continue to do so unless they get a home game in the playoffs, in which case they'll probably lose. But here, with the Lions starting to fall down a little bit, as I said they would a couple weeks, albeit I did think they would fall a little bit less. But I am going to go with the Cowboys. I think they'll just be able to dominate the Lions at home. And I think the Lions should be worried, quite frankly. The next game is the Raiders at the Colts. The Raiders are close to getting a playoff spot. They're 7-8, and they beat the Chiefs. So I could be wrong. I think that there's actually a very slim chance they could win the division. I don't think they will. I still think Chiefs will win the division, but the Raiders, they've got nothing to lose while at the same time having something to play for. Because I don't think they're too concerned about making the playoffs, but the idea of them getting into the playoffs, I think it excites them. And I think they'll be very competitive in this game, but right now it's not their offense doing anything, it's their defense. If their offense can step up, they can be a real strong team. And they're going to be going against the Colts, who just took a thrashing against Atlanta, of all teams, last week. 26-10. They just couldn't stop the run. Bijan Robinson was a monster. I don't think they had Michael Pittman. I don't think he was in the game. But the Colts have learned to deal with a lot worse. And I think in this situation, they'll be able to deal with a team that doesn't feel as complete as Atlanta, but also doesn't feel as flimsy. So it feels more consistently mid rather than either really good or really bad. But I think the Colts will be able to outmatch the Raiders, so I think the Colts will win. And the next game, this is one that a lot of people are excited for. The Dolphins at the Ravens. There's been this ongoing theme where the two best teams are going up against, the supposed two best teams are going to be going up against each other. And they just kind of get destroyed. And it's a pattern where the winning team goes on to play the next game against another one of the best teams, and then they lose. We started it with Eagles-Chiefs, where the Chiefs got battered by the Eagles, and then it was Eagles-Niners, where the Eagles got battered by the Niners, and then it was Ravens-Niners, where the Niners got battered by the Ravens. Does this mean that the Dolphins are going to give a battering to the Ravens? Because the Dolphins are coming off a victory against the Cowboys, albeit it was a very close game. But their defense was able to step up. Even they really suffered because of penalties in that game. I saw a lot of people say the Cowboys had a lot of penalties, but I think the Dolphins' penalties harmed them a lot more. And it nearly cost them the game. But Tua is able to move the ball well again. He's going up against a very strong Ravens defense. And the Ravens are coming off a victory against the Niners, who were the supposed Super Bowl favorites, and I think now that's shifted to the Ravens for now. And I think the Ravens are looking for revenge after the Dolphins' comeback last year. Because I think both times these teams have played, the Dolphins have won. But Ravens are way too strong at the moment, and this could be another one of those games where they're the two best teams, even though I think Niners are actually better than Dolphins. Where it's the two best teams, and then the team that won the last game between the two best teams got battered. So the Dolphins could just destroy the Ravens, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think I'm going to give the edge to Baltimore here. I think home advantage is going to help them a lot. They don't have too many injuries. They have some, like Mark Andrews and their running back from the start of the season. I can't remember his name. It's something like Zay Jones? I could be completely off with that, but it's with a healthy Ravens team, they are almost unstoppable. So I'm going to go with Baltimore. The next game is the Patriots at the Bills. The Patriots are coming off a victory against Denver, and honestly, I didn't see that coming. Bailey Zappi managed to step up and give the Patriots a. I think they had a game-winning. Did they have a game-winning drive? I can't remember, but they managed to put up a fair amount of points, considering this team doesn't have all that much, and their defense was able to play great throughout the whole game. Yes, they nearly blew their lead, but they managed to hold on. So hang on, wait. So never mind. I don't think they had a. Maybe they didn't have a game-winning drive, or they just stopped the Broncos one. Either way, the Broncos had problems, and the Patriots took advantage of them. And the Bills nearly losing to the Chargers. That could have been atrocious for them. Because if they had lost that game, then Dolphins would have won the division by now. However, they managed to get through. And I think last time the Patriots actually beat the Bills. But the Bills, they need to get this win because this is meant to be their... Out of the 2 games they've left, the Patriots and Dolphins, this is definitely the easiest of the 2. So they need this win if they want to be able to win the division. And I think it'll be close, this game, and also the division contention. But I'm going to give the slight edge to Buffalo. I think they're a lot more competitive right now. The Patriots should be wanting to lose to try and tank for maybe a quarterback if they're not planning to use Bailey Zappi. But they should be tanking for a higher draft pick, and it would help the Bills because they'd be closer to catching Miami. So I'm going to go with Buffalo. The next game, Titans, Texans. The Titans almost beating the Seahawks and nearly giving me a heart attack. Because honestly, watching Seahawks play is extremely stressful. I assume it's what most Vikings fans experienced last season. But they started Tannehill for some reason. I guess they weren't happy with what Levis was doing, but I don't know why they thought Tannehill was the better alternative. Because he's not. And apparently that showed when we managed to beat him. And they're going to be facing Houston, who might not be Stroudless this week. I think Houston is optimistic about the Texans. The Texans quarterback starting. So Stroud returns, which I think he will. I'm gonna go with the Texans. I only found this out recently, by the way, because my original verdict was going with the Titans, but I've also picked them the last at least 2 weeks, and they've disappointed me both times. Actually, that's not true. They didn't disappoint me last week because, well, they lost to us, so thank you. But I got them wrong both times. And right now, I don't have much faith in them. I had a lot more faith in them at the start of the season, but that's depleted. And the Texans, they could start to go on a roll here. They are entering the final stretch for the playoffs, and they need CJ Stroud. And I think he'll come back, and I think he'll lead them to a victory. The next game is the Panthers at the Jaguars. The Panthers nearly beating the Packers, but it's a defense that's led by Joe Barry. And Joe Barry is not a good defensive coordinator. I think that's what he is. So it's not really too much to say because the Packers defense isn't really that good. But given the Panthers' record, it's okay. And they're going to be going up against the Jaguars, whose biggest flaw has absolutely been Trevor Lawrence and turnovers. He had 2 interceptions, and he fumbled the ball twice, losing one of those fumbles. And I think they also had a turnover on downs at that point. So there were a lot of turnovers in their game against who were they playing? I actually can't remember who they were playing. Buccaneers, that's it. Because they got destroyed by the Buccaneers. It was 30-12, but they were 30-0 down at some point. So that's definitely not going to have a good look on them. But right now, the Colts and the Texans are hunting them down, and they need to watch their back and they need every win they can get. I think they'll be very competitive. Going against Carolina, I don't think the Panthers will be able to have much use of the inevitable turnovers that the Jags will have. But I think the Jags will be able to at least step up and win this game. So I'm going to go with Jacksonville. The next game is the Cardinals at the Eagles. The Cardinals not playing too great, to be honest, against the Bears. I mean, they didn't make it too easy, but I think it was like they lost by at least 2 scores, or it was by 2 scores. They lost by quite a bit, and that's going to be concerning because they don't really have any offensive weapons. Buda Baker wants to leave, I think, but right now the Cardinals have almost nothing, and the Eagles breaking their losing streak, but it was close. They had a fair lead against the Giants, and they nearly lost it. But with all that being said, this is in Philadelphia, and I still think they're a way better team than the Cardinals. So I am going to pick Philadelphia to win. I honestly would be kind of surprised if the Cardinals won. But at the same time, I wouldn't. Because the Eagles should win, but they've been struggling as of recently. And that's been apparent in the past month of games. So I'm going to go with the Eagles, but Cardinals could win. But I don't think that will happen. The next game is the Rams at the Giants. The Giants nearly making a comeback against the Eagles. I think they lost 33-25. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think they also benched Tommy DeVito for Tyrod Taylor. So the Giants' quarterback situation is still dreadful. Their offense isn't doing that well. Defense isn't great. O-line isn't great. The Eagles have been struggling recently, which is why the Giants were able to actually do something against them. I mean, they lost, but they did something. Meanwhile, the Rams are looking dangerous. They are looking very threatening. Had a 1-score win against the Saints, but it was by 8 points, so the Saints would have had to get a touchdown and 2-point conversion. But the Rams, I think, are going to make the playoffs. And I think, I don't think this game secures it for them. They're not guaranteed, but it'll be highly likely for them to get in the playoffs. And I think they will beat the Giants. I don't think the Giants have much to play for at the moment. They don't really have the highest draft pick, but I think they're in like the top 7 or so. So losing would benefit them a bit, and the Rams winning would benefit them a lot because they'd be more secure in their playoff spot. I think they'll get the number 6 seed behind either Dallas or Philadelphia. But nonetheless, I don't think the Giants can win. I think the Rams will win, and I just think it'll be kind of a win-win for both. Unless the Giants have a terrible draft pick, but that's not for a while. The next game is the 49ers at the Commanders. The Niners struggling against the Ravens and getting destroyed. I think 33-19. That's a 2-score win. And Brock Purdy having 4 interceptions. That's not good. But the Commanders don't have too great of a defense, especially considering that they couldn't contain the Jets running back Breece Hall. I mean, they nearly made a comeback, but they still lost. And considering I think Christian McCaffrey is a better running back than Breece Hall, I think the Niners should win this quite comfortably. They've just got a better offense, they've got a better defense, they've got a better pretty much everything. And I don't think Washington's going to stand a chance, to be honest. So I'm picking the Niners. The next game, Saints, Buccaneers. This is possibly the most important game this division has this season, aside from maybe next week's games. Because both of these teams could win the division. Because if Saints win this game, they don't exactly go on top of the division, and I don't think Falcons do if they win. So the Saints can't go on top of the division, no matter what combination I have. Saints can't go top, but they can if they win next week as well. But the Saints couldn't beat the Rams, and that's hurt them because they think they needed that win. They really needed it to be able to compete with Tampa and even Atlanta. Somehow Atlanta's still in it. But the Bucs destroyed the Jaguars, as I said earlier, 30-12. And Baker Mayfield is looking like that guy again. He's looking like that guy. He's looking very good. And I said this at the start of the season. I have trust in Baker Mayfield, and it looks like it's pulled off so far. I don't exactly think they'll have a deep playoff run, but they could do decent. And I think they will win the division. And I think this game is going to help them, because I think they're going to beat the Saints in Tampa. And that's going to pretty much knock the Saints out of the playoffs. I think that's what it does. I mean, they can. No, I think they can still catch us, but they can't win the division. Speaking of the division, Falcons Bears is next, and I think Bucs will secure the division here as well because I'm picking the Bears, and that means neither Atlanta nor New Orleans can catch Tampa. So Atlanta had a fairly convincing win against the Colts, and Chicago had a fairly convincing win against the Cardinals. However, at the moment, I trust the Bears more than I do the Falcons, because the Falcons seem to do well in games that just don't really matter. And they were playing a cross-conference game. That's a game that definitely doesn't matter. But, I mean, it matters for their record, but I don't think they'll be able to catch Tampa. And Chicago, I don't know what they're playing for. Maybe it's just out of spite to catch Green Bay, but they've done fairly decent. I think they started the season 0-4, and since then they've gone 7-5, which is pretty good, especially considering how everyone thought, oh, the Bears are going to do just as bad as they did last season. But that's clearly not the case. They've done a lot better. They're 6-9 at the moment. Oh right, yeah, not so that means they're 6-5 since they've started 0-4. That's my bad. But I think this will take them to 7-5 since then, having a 7-9 record. So I think the Bears will get this win. It's in Chicago, and I trust their offense more than the Falcons, to be honest. I think Falcons have more talent, but their quarterback is untrustworthy. When Ridder's in, but when Heineke's in, I trust it a bit more, but I don't trust Arthur Smith. His play calling isn't. It's either atrocious or legendary, and I have a feeling it's going to be atrocious in this game against Chicago, so I'm going to pick the Bears. The next game is the Steelers at the Seahawks. The Seahawks barely beating the Titans, having to have a game-winning drive, and it almost gave me cardiac arrest, honestly, because it is so stressful to watch the Seahawks play, and to know that we're 8-7 and we're pretty much on like the very edge of the playoffs. We just can't secure it. But this is a must-win for us to get if we want to get in the playoffs. But you know who else this is a must-win for to get in the playoffs? The Steelers, who battered the Bengals by 34-11. Oh, and this wasn't 26-10. Okay, I got that wrong. Moving on. The Steelers apparently They have this thing where they have a quarterback that does really well for one game, does pretty bad by the second, and then is benched the third. But their defense is still keeping them alive. And with the with the amount of distrust I have in Seattle at the moment, and the fact that the Steelers just show that there is still some minuscule form of life there that can eventually bloom into something monstrous, I'm picking the Steelers. I really hope Seattle wins. But this is one of the most important games of this season. And if we lose this, I think we're just pretty much out of the playoffs. I don't think we can get back in. I think this game will knock us out of it. And either the Packers, Vikings, or Saints will take our spot. Hoping we win, but I'm not confident. So I'm picking Pittsburgh. The next game is the Bengals at the Chiefs. The Bengals getting wrecked by the Steelers, but then again, they tend to struggle with their divisional games, and that's shown throughout the last couple of years. And especially this season, they're 0-5 for their divisional games. So, minus divisional games, the Bengals are doing pretty decent. Outside division games, they're 8-2. I mean, yes, that was mostly with Joe Burrow, but still. Meanwhile, the Chiefs losing to the Raiders, and the Raiders had two specifically defensive touchdowns in 7 seconds. Not actually 7 seconds, it was 7 seconds on the game clock. But that is wild. Their offense can't get anything going, and they're making mistakes like that. That is just... It's all falling apart for the Chiefs. And I think the Bengals will be able to expose them for that. I'm going to pick the Bengals here. It's a non-divisional game, so the Bengals immediately have the edge. And I think the Bengals have more talent anyway. Their receivers are actually good. Their run game is pretty good as well. The Chiefs have basically, on offense, Mahomes, Rashee Rice, and Pacheco, who's concussed at the moment. So they have Rice and Mahomes. Mahomes is making mistakes against the Raiders, and Rice isn't always playing. So the Chiefs are going to suffer. And at the moment, they're going to end up winning their division with the same record as the Buccaneers. And that is crazy. That is crazy. But I think Cincinnati are just overall the better team, especially outside the division. So I'm going to go with the Bengals. The next game is Chargers at Broncos. The Chargers, their first game without Brandon Staley, and they actually look decent. Nearly beating the Bills. I think they lost 24-22. But still, it was a close game. So their offense can get something going, and when Justin Herbert comes back, I think they'll actually have... I think next season for them will be pretty good, especially if they have good draft picks. Meanwhile, the Broncos, while I do think they're at the moment a better team than the Chargers, or if they can be, they struggled against the Patriots with a very, very tough loss against New England. However, this is also in Denver, but I don't think they'll struggle as much against the Chargers. They beat them earlier in the season 24-7, and then the Chargers took a loss of 63-21 the next week. Oh wait, hang on. The Chargers took a loss. Chargers conceded 63 in a game, and Broncos conceded 70. Does this mean that the Broncos are going to score 63 and the Chargers are going to score 70? No way. Chargers win. No. I do think the Broncos they'll be fine in this game, but at the moment I'm starting to trust them less. They had their spike and they're starting to peter out. They're starting to just start sloping down again. And their playoff hopes are... Their playoff chances are starting to minimalize. So I think this game will be crucial for them. I think they'll be more competitive. I'm going with Denver. And the final game on Sunday night, because there's no Monday night game, Packers-Vikings. The Vikings nearly beating the Lions, but Nick Mullins throwing his fourth and final interception of the game to give Detroit the win and the division. So the Vikings, they do have some flares of life, and if they didn't have so many turnovers, they would have won that game. Unlike the Jags, who just had a lot of turnovers, and the Niners. There were a lot of turnovers this week. Meanwhile, the Packers nearly losing to Carolina because their defense is just bad. So I think this will actually be a very close game. Originally, I had the Packers, but now I'm actually going to lean towards the Vikings. I think somehow the Vikings will sweep the Packers this season. I think their defense is better than the Packers by far. And if they just don't turn the ball over as much, like they suffered at the start of the season, they might be able to put up a few points against the Packers and secure a victory. So I'm going to go with the Vikings. And that's going to be the end of my week 17 predictions. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know your comments. Let me know your Let me know your predictions in the comments below. Go Hawks, and until next time, goodbye and have a nice day.